We've already gotten a little bit of news, and let's just jump into it. Again, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to grow this thing a little bit more. Feel free to comment what you think is going to happen in the draft tonight, and like video and all those fun things. Let's go. So yeah, let's talk about Cade Cunningham, because Cunningham, as of right now, is the pick to be the number one selection for the Detroit Pistons in the upcoming NBA draft. So that being said, look, the news kind of just broke from Woj about how, Cunningham's the guy for Detroit, and any doubt of that is kind of been swept away now. The report is that Cunningham is going to be the guy, and that he is going to be the top pick. So I have him number one on my board. I think Cunningham provides a lot of good size. He can shoot the ball relatively well. He is a guy who's talented in, just being able to pass the ball. Probably needs a little bit of help on defense. Turns over the ball a little bit too much, but overall, he's the number one guy, I personally believe, in this draft. Now, the one thing I do want to make clear is that just because he is the number one guy in the draft, I want to make it clear that he's not necessarily a guy that is going to a world beater. For example, I don't think he's a guy like a LeBron James kind of a prospect. I don't think he's even a Karl Anthony Towns type of a prospect. But I do believe he's a guy who is going to be a multiple-time All-Star and has a pretty solid floor, and at the same time also has a good ceiling as to what he can be in the NBA. Let's move forward to my next guy, who is Jalen Green. So there's a lot of issues that I actually had with Jalen Green before the draft, and I started watching him play a little bit more, and I was like, okay, he probably is the next best guy. I wouldn't mind him being taken at number one if I was a Pistons fan. But yeah, Jalen Green's the next guy. He had this weird tweet where he talked about how, like, if he had gone to college, then he would have been the number one selection, which I'm kind of just like, look, if you're kind of smart about this kind of a thing, you would want to be selected by the team that's going to provide you the most, you want to be selected by the team that can maximize your ability and maximize, honestly, your earnings in the NBA. Because if your goal is just to be the number one pick and go to a crappy organization and never be able to do anything as far as winning in the NBA, but you made your goal as being the number one pick, I don't know where your priority's at. I think there is a little bit of maturity issue there. Ultimately, though, he's an athlete. He can score. I think he's got a very, very high ceiling. He's got solid size. He'll grow. You hope he grows into an NBA body and kind of works there. But ultimately, I have Jalen Green as my number two prospect on the board. Number three is Evan Mobley. A lot of this is chalk, I know, but Evan Mobley, I do have him number three. Now, the one thing I do worry about Mobley is just kind of how his rebounding is going to translate to the NBA, because he never was a rebounder at USC. Guy's 7 foot. Obviously, can play great defense on the perimeter and also inside. Got a lot of blocks there in USC. And I think he's a dude that is very Jaren Jackson-like. Now, we haven't seen Jaren Jackson's ceiling yet in the NBA, so it's kind of hard. I think if maybe like Jaren Jackson doesn't have an injured season this year and, plays up to the ability where I think a lot of people think he can, and that breakout happens this year, I think Mobley might be the number one pick. And some people are still making that argument that he still could be. I just think that with some scouts, with some fans, media, like if they watch a player do something, they will then the next year bring in with a prospect who is very similar to the guy who just broke out, his value goes up. I think an example of that was it Michael Carter Williams? And then like the next year, I think it was maybe Dante Exum, where 6'6" point guard, like he can't pass it up. Carter falls off, Dante falls off. But yeah, ultimately, I do think Evan Mobley is a guy who can, I think he'll obviously need to grow into an NBA body. I don't think he's an Anthony Davis type, but I do feel like there's Jaren Jackson there. But I do feel like he has a little bit more upside than what Jaren Jackson can provide. He's athletic, can cover the floor on defense. Obviously with his length, and is just definitely a solid prospect. He's another guy. If somebody wants to trade up Now that we know that Cade Cunningham's going to go number 1 to Detroit, if a team wanted to try to trade up to 2 to get him, or even, you know, before the Cunningham confirmation, even up to 1 to get him, I don't know if I'd mind that. I think these 3 guys are in the tier of their own, and if they were any of these 3 guys were selected number 1, I wouldn't mind that at all. Okay, number 4 here is Jalen Suggs. So Suggs I actually initially had at number 2 after the college season ended. And it kind of, I kind of moved off of him, backed up. Jalen Green moved up. Evan Mobley moved up to take his spot. And, you know, the one thing I worry about with Suggs is that you didn't see too much of a jump shot in college. Dude is athletic. Dude is a leader. He's quick. He can pass. I think it was in that UCLA game where he just had a fantastic pass. That was like a half-court bounce pass. It was just beautiful. The dude has NBA skills, and that is something that separates him from other guards in the draft. His size is pretty solid. He has explosion as far as being a really good athlete. So I think there's a high upside there. I do kind of see a situation, though, where, you know, again, he might take time to translate to the NBA. He did play off ball in Gonzaga, so maybe he is okay with playing off ball to start his career, and not need to be like the ball centric kind of a point guard where the ball's in his hands all the time. He can play either position. I think he needs to get a little bit better on the defensive end, just a tiny bit. He does get steals. You know, people throw out the names of Jason Kidd. I've seen him. I've seen Darren Williams. But I think he's a solid point guard here. Again, not in the tier, and I don't think his upside is as good as the Cunningham, Green, and Mobley trio. But I do feel like he's still probably the next best player. Now let's move on to number 5, and that's where we'll end the stream. I am going to kind of turn some heads here. I'm going to probably get a lot of hate for this, but I have Jalen Johnson, number 5. There's a lot of talk about how he is a little bit immature. He quote unquote quit at Duke after, due to the season and, ultimately wanting to prepare for the draft. Look, I understand that. I understand maybe there's a maturity issue. There's been questions about if he is, if he's been interviewing well, because it doesn't sound like he has been. So he's a guy I think can drop in the draft to the late lottery, maybe even more. I've seen mocks where he's gone farther than that. But I think he's got a lot of good things. He's got an NBA body. If he can improve his jump shot a little bit, that's awesome. But one thing that I really liked when I just kind of looked at the statistics for Jalen Johnson is that I thought that he was a great passer. Go watch some of his highlights at Duke. He was making some great passes. He rebounds. He defends at a high rate. And he's already in kind of this NBA body where he's like, again, he is right now, I believe, standing at 6'8", is it? Yeah, I mean, he's got the NBA body. And 6'9", so he's got the NBA body, and I think he's just going to be a solid player in the NBA and provide a team with a strong 4, a guy who can play the 4, that play the 3, and I see some good things from Jalen Johnson, so I'm excited about kind of to see where he lands, because if he drops to a good team, that could mean some interesting things. Ultimately, that's where my top 5 stands. I'm going to start another stream here in just a moment. We're going to go over the top 5 gems that are going to be in the first round of the draft that aren't going in like the top 5, top 10 area, and they are going to be guys who I think can contribute this year in the NBA. So feel free to join us. Again, subscribe to the channel, like, comment, tell me where I'm wrong about Jalen Johnson, and we'll go from there.